So hello and good evening. Waving in the back, hello. My name is Irene Bakarik and I'm one of the directors of the Enoch Turner Schoolhouse Foundation. Welcome, thank you so much for braving the wintry weather and joining us here. And welcome to everybody who's joining us online. So for those of you who don't know, we are now in what was the very first free school in Toronto. It was funded by a brewer named Enoch Turner. And when it opened in 1848, it was called the Ward School. So the job of our foundation is to keep that memory alive and also to sponsor school visits so that today's children can learn about the beginnings or the roots, if you will, of public education. So let's begin tonight with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. So this is the fourth and final program in our Speaker's Corner Arrival series, where we've been hearing stories from immigrants and refugees about their challenges, if you will, in terms of coming to Canada to start a new life. And our theme for tonight is fear of deportation. Let me introduce our host for the series, writer and CBC Radio broadcaster, Michael Enright.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming, to those of you who braved the storm, and thank you for listening online. We have a large audience as we stream this, and it's great to have you. I think you dropped something. Oh. There are something like 500,000 undocumented immigrants in Canada. And because they have no legal status, they're subjected to a number of abuses from employers, landlords, temporary employers. They're also subject to the abuses of immigration consultants, so-called, and crooked immigration lawyers. In fact, they're really at the mercy of everybody. There are job recruiters who make promises and raise expectations and then walk away from them. And it's a nightmare in terms of bureaucracy. The federal government, I shouldn't have given up smoking 25 years ago. The federal government is trying to come up with what they call a regularization program to make these immigrants legal. And it's important to remember that they have broken no laws. They are not criminals. They haven't broken any laws. Yet they can wind up in our jails for any number of bureaucratic reasons. There are hundreds, perhaps thousands of these undocumented immigrants in our jails, provincial jails across the country. They can be there for weeks or months, sometimes up to a year. They can be subject to solitary confinement. Their charter rights are taken away from them. In 2021, two groups, Amnesty International and the Human Rights Watch, did a survey of thousands of these people who found themselves in this position. Now, the government, again, has said that they don't want to put immigrants in jail. Well, then there's a simple solution to that: let them out. The people we're talking to tonight know all about the frustrations, the nightmares, the backlogs, and the fact that they have to do things that we don't. They have to deal with pieces of paper. They have to deal with memories. They have to deal with photographs, things to prove to the state they are who they say they are. So I'm glad you're both here tonight. I'm going to ask you if you could say your name, where you're from, and when you came. Felix?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Michael. My name is Felix Pasi Mubuke. Incidentally, the way you pronounce Felix, you instead call me Felix, but it's okay. So my adoption is Felix.
Yeah. Okay.
I come from Uganda. I left Uganda on the 23rd of July this year. My intention was to go to the AIDS conference in Montreal, but I'm finally here.
Hi there. My name is Ludmila, and you can call me Mila for the ease of it. Ludmila Vespala Brown. I came here in 2008. Initially, I came just as an immigrant from Ukraine.
From Ukraine. Let me stay with you for a moment. Why did you pick Canada? And then I'll ask Felix. Why did you choose Canada? The villa?
Well, in the first place, my story starts with, it's a love story. I met my husband, who is Canadian, in 2000, in the spring of 2000 in Kiev. My husband was working in international development, a lawyer. He is from Halifax. And, we started as good friends. I was teaching him Russian. He was teaching me English. And, we became a family. Yes. So
and
that
you chose Canada.
Oh, I didn't choose Canada right away.
You looked around.
Yeah, we actually travel a fair bit because my husband's contract was in Ukraine until 2003. I initially worked in Ukraine as a lawyer, and he is a lawyer as well. And I had a wonderful career. I had everything going really nicely and well for me. Was excited. My income was growing so well, and I had a real sort of career in the future in Ukraine. But then my husband's contract came to an end, and he asked me if I want to stay, and he would then stay in Ukraine, or we, should pursue another contract. And there is another story within the story there that I won't go into it, but the decision was made that we should continue. So we went initially to Macedonia.
Felix, what about you? Why did you pick Canada?
Yeah, actually, I think I didn't pick Canada, but fate chose Canada for me.
Fate chose Canada.
Yes, because I had made several attempts to flee my country. I had begun from Kenya, the neighboring country to Uganda, horrible as my country. So when fate chose for me a conference in Canada, and so here I am. So fate chose the country for me.
Why did you leave Uganda? Why did you get out?
I left Uganda because I wanted to survive. One is to survive, and the two is to find a future for my people, my community, and my family.
What do you mean survive?
The story is big in that I come from LGBT community. It's the first time I'm mentioning this live on air because it's a taboo to talk about that where I come from. It's one of the leading homophobic countries in Africa called Uganda. So I was freeing from my people, my parents, from my community and my government because it's a taboo to be gay in that country. So I had lived for 38 years of denial, pretense, and torture.
You use the word survival, and you mean it literally, right? You would have lost your life if you had stayed in Uganda.
Incidentally, a friend of mine lost his life yesterday.
Lost his life yesterday?
Yes.
A gay friend?
Yes.
In Uganda?
We were with him when we went for asylum in Kenya, but because he failed to make it to any other safer country, he was murdered on the street in the night. So yesterday is when his body was found. That is how horrible it was for LGBT people.
What would happen to you if you were sent back, if you were deported?
That's a nightmare I'm living. Even those that have not made it out of the country are pronounced dead. So how about me who has tainted the image of my country, that they commit atrocities against LGBT?
Yeah. So
just imagine I'm handed back as a deportee back to the country, and I have already I am open gay person.
But I don't understand why the Canadian government does not recognize that as a legitimate reason for not going back. Are you? we have an open society, allegedly, about gays.
Yeah, when you get it, when you're told by a person here that Canada is the safest country for LGBT, the entire body and mind gets happy until when you get here and you begin to live into double torture of not knowing what the safest you thought you would find. Because when I got here in July, I thought, yes, here I can speak about my sexuality, here I am safe. Until when the lawyer told me, no, you are not safe, until when so many years, when you will be granted, what did he say? He said citizenship, and you have to bring a lifetime proof that you are LGBT, including proof that you have been having sexual intercourse with a person of the same sex.
You have to prove you're gay.
Yes. And the proof is not merely saying, proof is documented proof in terms of pictures, love letters. So what actually meant or means to me is I was supposed to live a gay lifestyle back in my homophobic country with, bearing in mind I'm supposed to document.
Yeah.
When I find a fellow man, take a picture while we are in bed, document a picture, because it will be required that in another country, which I didn't do. So here you are a refugee, you don't have any proof that you recorded that you are LGBT. So here you are.
I could say something that I won't. Look, but I noticed in the middle you were nodding your head when he was talking.
Oh, I went through the same thing.
Frustration.
Not just a frustration. I had to prove. That's. I met my husband in 2000. I had a daughter born in Macedonia, but given Canadian passport right then. But in 2008, when I came here and applied for immigration in Canada, I had to prove the same thing, that I am actually in a real marriage, that my marriage is not a sham.
But didn't you have a marriage certificate? Or
I did, but that wasn't enough. I had to send a book, lifetime of pictures of being in a relationship with this man and proving that it wasn't a sham marriage. I actually had to show, a different settings that we were in love. I had a file like this big.
Did you have to prove that your daughter was your daughter?
Well, at least that I didn't have to prove. Yeah, but it was similar frustration and shame, because it's like they were digging through your dirty laundry type of situation.
You said that it was like being in limbo for 7 years.
Oh yeah.
What was your life like day to day during that time? What did it do to your head psychologically?
Well, when I was initially talking about the possibility of doing this interview, it wasn't just fear. It was constantly switching between anger and fear. Because at the end of the day, I am a lawyer too, and I kind of, we lawyers, we kind of know where to look for things, how to protect your rights, how know your rights, and so on. And nevertheless, I have a gruesome story of immigrating to Canada. It took me 7 years of limbo. For the first 3 years, I had no health coverage. I had no work permit. And for the next 4 years, after receiving the permanent residency, I still had been waiting and living in limbo, whether I will be given the citizenship. In fact, on the day I was given the citizenship officer looked at me and said to me, "Now prove that you weren't on such and such day in US. I'll disclose you. I went through the wrong bridge in Niagara Falls, going to International Art Fair. And instead of going through the commercial through Banff, I went through the one that connects the Niagara Falls, right?" So we were told to turn around and go into through the commercial bridge. And that day, they stamped my passport such a way that then here is my Canadian passport. And he's questioning me, what were you doing on that day for such short period in US? And I'm standing there and thinking, well, what's going on? Like, I don't even remember which day. And until we finally discussed, I recall that that was my international art fair trip, and I had to go through a different bridge. But even then, after everything that I went through, on the day of receiving and being approved for citizenship, I was in limbo.
In all that time, what, about 7 years, you said, did you feel that you could be deported at any time?
Oh, yeah.
You could be kicked out of.
Oh, yeah. You have bird rights.
Yeah, about last month, when the fear of deportation came to my mind, I thought of leaving and going back to my country before I'm deported. Because deportation means you're supposed to be handed over to authorities in that country.
And you don't want to be handed over.
I do not want to.
Yeah.
I have had enough trouble with authorities over my sexuality. So I was thinking, what if I left by myself at the airport and then sneak in the country and start afresh before I'm deported? Because the pressure was too much.
It's not just that you're gay, it's that you're also an activist.
Yes.
In Uganda, and that brought the attention of the government, which doesn't like that.
Actually, before I left the country, I had been dressed by a friend of mine somewhere. In fact, he needs to be watching me. He dressed me up as a woman in our local women attire for me to be able to drive from his house to the airport. And I had to change from the woman character to my own character at the airport's washroom.
Wait a minute, why were you dressed as a woman?
To disguise myself from the person they were looking for. And so they must be now watching you and saying, how could you have? And I'm disclosing this, so many people that might want to use the same technique will not be able to use that to disguise to get out.
And imagine if you be deported now after disclosing.
Each of them will have a piece of me, the ears, the eyes.
So even talking to you is a threat.
Yeah, before I forget, today I received what the government calls the brown paper. Today after 4 months.
Explain what it is.
And today I had a chance to use it, and now I go to have my tooth. I have had tooth pain even before I left my country, but it has bothered me right here for 4 months. But I didn't have insurance, didn't know what to do. When I got the brown paper, I used it. And today, a few minutes ago, I took my first cookie, because if you have tooth pain, you can't eat.
Yeah.
And Taline gave me a cookie just to test and see if the tooth has been fixed. So you can imagine the 4 months that I was spent here thinking I had come to survive. I've lived it with a tooth, painful tooth. Today, when I'm speaking about it, is when I got the brown paper. But I still have a lot of months and days to come when I do not know what next.
The thing that is astonishing to me anyway, is that your lives have to be reduced to little bits of information and detail and papers and stuff.
Yeah.
How do you keep track of all of that? How did you know what is needed, and how did you?
Oh, you train yourself. You train really to keep track of all those stamps in the passport, and like your evidence. For example, I had to produce. As I said, I was on the road since 2003 with my husband. We lived in many countries. I actually moved 21 times, and I had to produce a full list of every address, every country visit, not just the address where I live, but every visit, the dates and timestamps. And my passport actually was a thick one where I could fit all the stamps. And I had to produce all of that. You really train yourself. Your file is this thick, and keeping track of your whereabouts and what you do. And it's like, you're collecting information on yourself all the time. My dog was more ready to travel than I was.
Your dog was more
Canadian
than you.
Oh yeah.
What happens when you contact somebody? I want to get into the whole process. because it seems to me there's something Kafkaesque about it. But when you telephone Immigration Canada or you talk to somebody, what's the conversation like?
Oh, that was the most frustrating, I think, part too, because it's faceless. At the time when I was processed, we could not get either the name of the person that you're talking to. It's very anonymous. We were very frustrated. My husband and I, we were trying both our best, and you don't know who you're talking to. In fact, I applied early 2009, and in 2010, after multiple inquiries, and my husband even wrote to the Minister of Immigration. Only then we got an indication, basically a letter that was saying, well, there are delays.
Yeah, depends on you. Are you able to extract all the love messages, any images that we had me and you either on the park, on the street, and share those with me? And this is done by a lawyer. I say, now, what do I do? How do you tell a lawyer to write a gay statement?
What do you tell the people that you left behind? I mean, the people that know you came to Canada for certain reasons. What do you say to them about what it was like to arrive and what it has meant to you?
Well, for us, we were, well, we chose Canada. We didn't just, in a way, my husband's contract came first to be in Canada. Yeah. So that's why we decided to stay. But at the same time, I've traveled in so many countries, and I didn't just travel as a tourist. I lived in those places. I lived every day today, and I enjoyed different cultural settings and so on. And I can tell you, I love this place. People are the warmest in Canada to me. I mean, it's a very cold country from the perspective of the climate, as we could see today. So it's very snowy and cold. But people I found are the warmest in Canada. So this was my country of choice. And I felt, as being also married to a Canadian, that I'm choosing a new home. And, I kind of feel like I had a right to call this country home.
Felix, what about friends you left behind in Uganda? What do you tell them about arriving in Canada?
Actually, even when they see me post on Facebook, the statement they respond is I am in heaven. They pay heaven. This is heaven for where I come from. Regardless of the pain, the challenges that you let them know they will undergo, they say it's okay. It is better than nothing.
Yeah.
I'm 38 years and I have dreamt of living in my own country, the neighboring country that shares the same atrocities like my country, same pain. So if I had options of going to another boiling pot, how about Canada? So this is the first time that I am talking about the pain in Canada. Otherwise, every day that I get a chat with a person back home, I tell them, if you ever get a chance to talk to your heavenly God, ask them to bring you to heaven here.
Even though all of this time, you could be deported at any moment.
Yes. And sorry to say, even those that come from my country that are here, and as we are having friendly talk, when we talk about deportation, the only option they give is we'd rather die here at the airport than being deported. So we draw plans on what we will do. Others say I will jump in a train and I'm smashed. Others say I will hang. Others say I will take overdose. Because it's like, how do you leave Canada and you?
Because it comes down to acceptance. Yeah. This country is very multicultural, and we are all of different backgrounds. And it's the first place where it was okay to be Ukrainian and Canadian at the same time. It's about the principles of the society that we live by here. It's about your rights. Like I know when I visit other places and I come back to Canada, I get in my car and I know If anything happens, I have rights. I know that if I will be stopped by police, I have rights here. And it's about those principles and values. Being Canadian is it's being multicultural, being who you are, but being accepted for who you are. I think that's what you're really talking about, the acceptance. And that's why I think we're all here.
But before you get to the acceptance part,
oh, you live in fear.
Bureaucratic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What is the, Felix, for you, what has been the worst part of that, of dealing with the system, with the process?
Yeah, like I mentioned in the beginning, I've spent 4 months in the shelter with no friends, nowhere to go, no work. I had a job back home, but you have a job, but you are living in fear of security forces. So the hardest part for me here has been not knowing what not to do to offend the government to deport me. And I always Google on what I must do to survive, including neighborhood. Here, people don't often respond to good morning because it's a busy community. People rush to go and work. But I make sure I leave my shelter to greet people in the morning because I grew up knowing greeting a person is one way of engaging a person. So I greet, hello, good morning. Have you had a good day? To make me get some good books and good times in the community. But the worst nightmare has been not knowing what next.
But what
every day you wake up,
have you had to deal with prejudice, with racism? Because we like to say we don't have any racism in this country. Of course we do. Have you encountered that as a Black man?
Yeah, a lot. But like I mentioned, that is too small for my survival. It's minor. For as long as I am living, I have, if those that are Black like me have tormented me to that level, how about somebody? Yeah. So it's small. I've encountered that several times at the train station, on the street, but I assume I have not had. And let's go because I have a feeling I still have loads more to encounter than.
So you can dismiss it in a way. You can say it's not important. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that you have to think like that, right?
No.
It's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
You're Ukrainian.
Oh yes.
Your country's at war.
Yeah.
Has been since February the 24th. What do ordinary Canadians say to you about that? Do they say anything about?
Oh, I had a wonderful, so far, reach out from people, and everybody was getting together to sort of some way or form offering help. We right now, my husband and I, we have 5 refugees living with us in our home.
Say that again, please.
We have 5
refugees
living with us in our home. It's our duty, I believe, to Ukraine and to people that fighting this war for democracy, war for freedom of culture, and it is our duty without question. So,
okay, say to me what you would say to a person who says, I'm paying $8 for a head of lettuce. I'm paying $7 for milk. I can't get enough food for my children. Why should I give money to support a war 5,000 miles away?
Because that war is really the only thing that is stopping the state in Russia to inflict the pain on the whole world. Those people are giving their lives for our safety and freedom. This is a war of democracy. This is the war of choosing to be any kind of culture you want. This is, they are the front line. We here are safe because because Russia on their television channels freely discussing and speaking about that they are fighting the war with the West. They're not saying that we are fighting the war with Ukrainians. They're fighting the West in Ukraine.
just to.
It's a small price to pay. $8 a lettuce, go in another aisle.
That's very generous.
Or change the stores.
To go back to, I'm trying to find some way to be prescriptive. In other words, to have some suggestions that would change your lives, pardon me, and the lives of refugees. Give me some, and I'll ask both of you, what could be done tomorrow, next week, next month? A small thing, a major thing that would change the process and make it more humane.
Well, in the first place, I think the communication has to be improved.
Okay, tell me about that.
Let's just say this. When the war started and we had to deal with people finding a shelter in various countries in Europe, but also in Canada, my friend, whose husband is an immigration lawyer who just retired, helped us to arrange, to advise, to help arrange the papers for some people to come here as well. We were dealing with, number one problem was decommunication, because we didn't know.
More than the backlog? I mean, more than the red tape?
Well, it's like in a hospital. Once they applied that system, and there was a change in the hospital emergency rooms, where they applied the system where you switched from this room to next room to next room, and they've been telling you, okay, now we're going to do this, now we're going to do this. You know what's happening, and you psychologically prepare yourself. Okay, now I can possibly, let's give it an example, like in a Ukrainian refugee case. Now I need $1,000 to live through this process. Now I need another $500 to put food on the table or to seek shelter for my family. But when you don't know how to get by, you don't know what to live on, okay?
So it is limbo.
It is a total limbo, and you don't know how to structure, because it all comes down to money too, how are we going to get by through this? A family of refugees that just arrived, Michael, that didn't just arrive, but arrived in March. They came to Canada through Warsaw. They spent 3 days in a line just to get to the border. Then they spent 3 days in line on the border. Imagine living in the back seat of your car for 6 days, washroom needs and whatever, also having a sick with COVID child in the back seat, and then having only $1,500 to travel with. How would you get by? And then spending 27 days in Warsaw, waiting for your papers, then arriving to Canada with that money and hearing from your fellow colleague, in this case as an artist. This is actually, I'm giving you an example of a Ukrainian artist, Mykola Zhuravel, who came here with his wife and a child. And when he arrived here, he sends back $1,000 to help his colleague artists. And
I'm sorry, I just want to say, Ludmila says communication. That would be a number one area for reform, that you don't seem to know day to day what your status is. Now, what would you do to change the process?
To me, I think, just as you mentioned, this audience alone that you, Michael and Tim, have organized for me and those who are viewing is already a step ahead. Talking about it is important. For example, probably, I'm assuming that those in power might not know. But if we have an audience, if you can combine a voice, everybody else who has heard my story and her story, maybe something can be done. Because in my situation, I wouldn't want to be singled out by government as being a critique. But I would love to speak about it for those in power, those in places of influence to act, to know that things, maybe they don't know, they are caught up somewhere, probably in the war with Iraq, war in Ukraine. But if the more we talk, combine voices and talk about it, probably something can be done. But for example, I am a single person speaking for so many. So there's so many out there who are in the same dilemma like me. need to amplify their voices through your support and various programs organized. Probably something can be done. It's all I think can be done.
So, all right, Ludmila, you're talking about communications, letting people know where they stand day to day. Alex, you're talking about just conversations.
Yes.
About the way we are.
And the humility maybe in those conversations, also
Yeah.
like in Felix's case, right?
But there's something like 200,000 people in the backlog waiting for work permits or student permits or landed status. How do you deal with that? How does a government or how do a people deal with that number of souls?
Oh, some things can be so automated, really. Like, why do we backlogging on certain items? Like, for example, submitting the photographs or so on, just drop them into a Dropbox or whatever. But of course, or even like accessing the forms. There is, of course, duly, there are some kind of protection on our forms. But that protection also means I can't save that document. PDF cannot be saved if it's a government form. So you have to re-enter it. And, or for example, another case, like I was dealing with Ukrainian refugees, we had to go step by step process during the application. And in a way, before submitting anything, I made a phoning case to see what is next step, because you move to the next step and you don't know what they're going to ask you next. And it was like all the travels of your parents. How do I know? And imagine even also dealing with people that are running from the war, the trauma. I was asking for the documents. Can you give me all your travels? Are you kidding me? Like giving you travels right now when I'm fleeing for my life? It's not in their mind. Like they cannot process it.
Well, all right.
Processing, listening to is something else. If you have an immigration petition or an immigration
and you say to me, Alex, if you send me home, I'll probably be killed. What am I supposed to do with that?
They ask you to prove.
Well, first of all, you got to prove he's gay.
Yeah, and then they ask you to prove on what reasons you cannot go back, like which cities you cannot go back to, which country you cannot go back, and then you can't go back too. And imagine if your parents are dying or something. I couldn't talk or visit my parents for 3 years. What do you do then?
Really?
Yeah, the worst part of proof is when they say you cannot produce your proof via email or text, but it has to leave that country where you ran away from by DHL. And you're aware DHL has to open. By post, remember the postal service involves opening whatever you're sending and reading through what you are sending. So they are asking you to get addresses, pictures of those that you have mentioned in your asylum claim.
Yeah.
And just imagine if they landed into the hands of security forces at the postal in that country, that would put the lives of those sending you or soliciting that information to you to be arrested for conspiring.
Because the government would know those names,
yes.
would have the names.
Yes, because they have to open and see what are you saying, where is it coming from. So just imagine you fled to Canada for your safety, but you have put the lives of so many people you're leaving behind at this.
There may be some listening to us, although not many, I hope, who would say, okay, you've come to this country. You need work because you need money. You're doing a lot of volunteer work, Felix.
Oh, and I did too.
Yeah, but what do you say to someone who, well, look, you're taking jobs that Canadians need. Why should we worry about you?
Well, let's just, first of all, set this straight. This country is made in major part of immigrants.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, but your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents at some point were immigrants. So Let's be fair. Second, if we are accepting here, I'm sorry, but we have professors driving our cabs, doctors. If we are accepting this talent here, we have to have an ability to offer them a due process so they can actually be professors and be doctors. You know, my friend who's gay came from Russia, was beaten badly there. And he can't, and he's a urologist and he cannot practice as a urologist. So he can be a manager in a lab, but he cannot be a urologist, you know, which is such a sad story.
Well, that's a subject that we dealt with a couple of weeks ago when people who are underappreciated and underemployed, the neurologist driving a cab or the professor cleaning offices at night, that kind of thing. That goes on, and I think will continue to go on until we come to an understanding that we need you folks. We need you.
We require badly a legal reform of our legal system, badly, because first of all,
reform of what?
Oh, for many, like generally for logistical processes, like this is logistics. Don't get me wrong, but this is logistics in trouble in terms of processing legal cases, processing evidences, processing certification, legalization, and so on. This is dragging so behind. Look what's happening on the internet too. I mean, we should enable, not disable our citizens and new citizens, moreover. I had to work, Michael, for 4 years, basically as a forced volunteer. Excuse me, but I was a forced volunteer. I came here, I opened my own business. I employed 5 employees. I paid salaries. I paid government dues. I paid their CPPs and whatnot.
But you weren't making money.
But I couldn't be paid myself. I couldn't bring income home because I had no permit to do so from the government. So I was outside of system. Is that fair?
Okay, let's reform.
Wait, I want to finish. That's not all.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
And then my husband investing money in this business, and then tax authority refuses in deductions. They said to him that I was doing a hobby, that it wasn't a business, that my business that took part in international art fairs, my art gallery, that I was, and I had to be a minority shareholder because otherwise it would have been considered foreign because I didn't have a status. I was apparently doing it as a hobby. I was supporting the Canadian economy with the salaries, but it was a hobby. And my husband is still fighting that in court on the federal level with CRA. They're still saying this. I am curating and coordinating the work of an art gallery at the Canadian National Exhibition right now. Apparently it's a hobby.
Felix, if by some miraculous stroke of luck, you were granted status, immigration, landed immigrant status, with a work permit and health benefits, what would you do with your life?
Before I came here, I told the LGBT community members that sent me off to the airport that I might not do a lot of tangible things for myself, but I will do a lot more to advocate and change the lives of those that I left back in the country. So if Canadian government gave me a chance to stay in whatever country, whether a resident or a citizen or whatever case, because I'm not sure what my fate would be, I will still advocate for the LGBT community. That's all right. Be it writing, be it talking.
Have you been in contact with the LGBTQ community here?
Yes.
Are they a help?
Most of those I have met are in the same situation like me. They are helpless. Civil that I meet every day are confused of the process, are in the shelters. They have a heap of their own troubles. So the best we can do now is lament, talk about it, cry about it, until say struggle continues. But if given chance and combine voices and efforts, there's so many in my category, we need to pick out countries that are ranking highly in committing atrocities against the LGBT community. Because right now, we are just a few who are here, and we also see traumatized and struggling to understand the system and how we fit in, like she mentioned, employment. And I can't begin talking about how much and what job to do when the biggest job is to redeem the voices or the voices back home. So whether I have capacity to talk at a volunteer level is all I will do. But I need to do that in a safer environment, Canada, without the fear of I might go back. If I forget, today when I was at immigrations, Etobicoke, yes,
It's a good one.
The gentleman, yes.
Yes,
the
they have
gentleman,
faster process.
the gentleman told me, you are not supposed to do anything until when you go and you meet the immigration board. And I told him, but I've read about a few winter boots and clothes. Can I dump them all? Because I'm not supposed to do anything before I meet the board. I can't have luggage because when you're being deported, do they give you a chance to carry the luggage you have admitted in my file here? So I promised him I'm not going to buy anything else until when I meet the board. So for now, I'm staying put, but I would want to give them a chance, want to use my energy and efforts to speak for the voiceless who are unable to speak. The issue of my comfort will come after if I can rescue a few.
Yeah, you kind of structure your life like little step at a time. You know, I'm going to do this for now. I'm going to do this one to get like you in a constant expectation, a constant limbo. In fact, when I was contacted for this interview, it kind of brought the memories of this whole process. I would compare it to labor. You know, it's something you got to gift at the end, but you really want to forget about the labor part. So.
Well, I want to thank you both for talking so candidly about your situation, for being with us. It's great. It's great to meet you. Felix Muboki from Uganda and Ludmila Despala from Ukraine. We've got questions for you from people online, and the first one is to Felix. Pardon me. Tell us about the family you left behind. How do they feel about your being in Canada, and are they safe in Uganda?
Is that for me to answer now?
I'm sorry?
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
In Uganda, I left a family of 6 children. And why I had so many 6 children is because I had to pretend to be a straight man. So I got a woman that my family was demanding to, you're old, I'm 38, you're old, you need to show us a woman because they're suspecting you could be gay. What shows you're not gay? So I got a woman, the mother of my kids, and almost every year I made sure I prove to society that I'm straight and have 6 children. Until when they see this interview, they are not aware that I am gay. So they are under hiding.
But I have to ask, when you get involved with immigration, has somebody said to you, well, you're not gay, you've got 6 kids?
Whether you have kids or you don't, they need proof of both the kids, the woman, and the men. Yes, you need to prove. And actually, one time the lawyer asked me, how did you sleep with the woman in the same year and then the man?
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to begin detailing details on how I sleep from my wife to go and meet the man. But they are not safe. That's why I'm not talking about my family.
But the question was, how do they feel about you being in Canada?
Be excited because I promised them I'm going to work hard, send the money, and they go to better schools. They are not aware I came here as a refugee. And actually, they're expecting me back soon, which soon I'm not talking about. And they are not aware that their dad is out here struggling to survive and stay in Canada as an LGBT bisexual man.
Mila, this is a question for you from one of our listeners. You said you couldn't work for 7 years. How did you cope with that?
Actually, I couldn't. I did work for 7 years. I couldn't be paid for 4 years out of the 7 years because I didn't have a work permit.
So how did you deal with that?
I opened my own business with my husband, and I was again a minority shareholder in the business. I looked at it again and I thought I might as well, any business requires a few years before it's stable and can sort of function and so on. I might as well use that time. So we invested in our own business and we were doubling in income every year, and we promoted Canadian emerging artists. We were promoting international artists. But at the end of the day, even when they started having income, I couldn't be paid. I couldn't show that I was working per se. It was a volunteership.
So how do you cope?
Oh, emotionally?
Yeah.
I was angry. They have no right. You know what? In the Constitution, when I was accepting my citizenship, I paid attention to that. They say, these are your rights, but here's your obligation. You have to provide for your family and yourself.
Yeah.
It's a constitutional right in Canada. And yet, they, through all these processes, do not give you a permission to provide. So I'm sorry, but there is a legal case just right there, if you know what I mean.
Felix, this is a question, maybe both of you could take this. We know that there are people who lie to immigration officers. It's my understanding that you lie to, that's automatic deportation. I'm not sure about that, but how do we deal with that whole question about people who are less than honest about coming into the country? How does,
well, but first of all,
people like you?
Mike, one way or another, it is clear who's lying or not. One way or another. As long as there is a communication, you can sense or you can feel well, some things don't add up. It is usually always clear. Somebody is cutting corners. And you know what? Some people that lie, they get in a preferential and quicker processes and so on. And there should be something done about human face added to our immigration services and a human communication.
Let me put that to you, Felix. A human face, that's interesting.
I think it is on case-by-case basis. It would be very crazy for the person, 38 years, 6 children, with a master's degree in Uganda, to come here and call yourself Guinea and extract images, both video and pictures of you, of yourself and the man, because you want to stay in Canada. I mean, the time and trouble you take to leave your country and study at that level is good enough for you to live a comfortable life back in Uganda or in Uganda. So it should be case-by-case basis for you to be checked that this is fraud. But no person of a sane mind would put themselves in target to lie and be deported.
But the both of you have gone through the process. Don't you get angry about the cheaters?
Oh, yeah. And the people that enable that, those phony immigration lawyers that aren't even lawyers, just the consultants or whatnot. Oh, yeah.
Because your survival depends so much on hearsay, the system of information system is not clear on what to do and what to expect. So you cannot tell who is telling the fact. longer. So you simply take in and you process little by little.
Yeah.
So for now, I am not in position to actually mention how I feel or what I do, because unlike her who survived, I'm just next to the chopping board, so I wouldn't want to give a comment on that, but it's confusing.
Yeah.
It's confusing.
All right, there's another question here. Maybe both of you can jump in. Do you have family or friends who want to walk the same path you did to get here? If so, how would you advise them? What would you tell them?
Maybe for me to start. Actually, one friend of mine in Uganda told me if the government can only be merciful and offer a plane ticket for everybody who wants to go to any destination, the country will remain empty with only the president and family. So they are willing, even if you say it is to swim through an ocean to Canada, they would take the same venture to get here. So they are willing and have options of saying that we can endure, that pain we can endure. That will advise you on how to survive what they don't even know about.
Good no?
I don't know how to answer this question, to be frank, because my experience was so frustrating that my brother, who's also a lawyer, and his wife, I suggested a few times, especially now with the war, they said, no, thank you. We'll deal ourselves somehow, because they witnessed what I went through, and they said, we're not mopping the floor somewhere in a restaurant illegally or whatever. You know, we're not doing this. We will get by somehow. My family hasn't left Ukraine, by the way, it's still there. But, you know, it's a very diminishing process to go through. It's very inhuman sometimes how they deal with you. And it certainly is very, very painful.
Well, again, thank you very much for being with us tonight. It's great to meet you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ludmila, that's power from Ukraine. I want to say a couple of things. The last 4 episodes of Arrival have been fascinating. And I think we've managed to talk to people and listen to people that we would not in the normal course of events talk to or listen to. I know it's been an education for me, and it's I think it's important for the listener. None of this, and I mean that literally, none of this would have happened without the work of a person named Talene Vartanian, who found the guests, God knows how she did it, and who got the information I needed. I worked with Talene for many decades at CBC, and she is an extraordinary investigator, producer, researcher, writer, whatever. And I thank her very much. That's her there. Thank you for coming out on this night, and thank you for listening at home. It's great to know that you're there, and we will do something like this again. We'll somehow get you involved. We'll try and figure out what it is. If you have any suggestions, let us know. And just indulge me before we go, because I love doing this. School is out. Thank you.